truth in journalism, where brave men and women gave voice to the voiceless. But then the corporations bought the journalist, poisoning the news that we are fed. With those tainted sources, all we ever ate was a steady diet of status quo. This hijacked narrative is the truth of mass suffering, injustice and corruption throughout our land. Status quo, status quo, status quo, status quo. To expose this shift to oligarchy came a band of honest journalists. They left the studio and hit the streets to give the microphone back to the people. From sea to sea, the people were empowered to share their truth. Their voices no longer stifled, reclaimed their power. Join the media revolution now.
Howdy, partners. Jordan Sheridan live from the mothership. It is, what's today? Thursday? Yes, Thursday, December 12th, 2019, live from New York. Hope everyone's having a lovely day. It looks right when I launched the live stream, it looks like we have the early exit polls across the pond in Great Britain. Does not look good if you're progressive in Great Britain right now. It looks like Boris Johnson and the Tories are going to be victorious. The margins could narrow, but as of right now, the BBC is reporting that, the Conservative Party, 368 seats, and the Labour Party, 191 seats, which would be a comfortable majority for Boris Johnson, who claims that he's going to push Brexit through. And I'm definitely going to get into this a little bit later. I want to start with a really important interview, I think, on Pete Buttigieg, but we will get into the UK elections. And for those of you that don't know, I was just in London about a week before the elections, so definitely know a little bit more about the situation there, which unfortunately, very similar to us, other than the fact that they have healthcare by the government, which is under attack. The working class in Great Britain has been under attack for 30 years, just like us. And it's kind of shocking to me that they would vote in such strong numbers for Boris Johnson. The media, like here, plays a big part in that. The media has gone after Jeremy Corbyn possibly worse than the media has gone after Bernie Sanders here. Again, I'm not stuttering. Worse than the media has gone after Bernie Sanders. That's saying something. So we'll get to that. Before I air this important interview, I want to remind you, we need you to get these numbers up. So smash that like button. It's the thumbs up button right under the video. Got 150 people watching right now. So the more people that press like on the live stream, the more people that will see this live stream. Also, we sent out a text alert for this, so you know we're growing. We have 291 of you. 291 of you have just signed up for our text alert system. We just started this like a couple weeks ago. So we definitely need more people to sign on to our text alerts. It's a way to get around this suppression we're dealing with from YouTube, particularly on notifications. So all you got to do, type in a brand new text message to 474747 and then enter Coup, C-O-U-P, and that will get you on our text system. We don't send a text every time we go live. We pick and choose because, frankly, it ain't cheap, these text alerts. But definitely sign up for our text alerts, 474747, and type in Coup. Follow us at Status Coup. We're live on Periscope right now. Also on Twitch, follow us at twitch.tv/Status Coup. And join our email list. Go to statuscoup.com and go to statuscoup.com. Jen just did a really great story exposing just who is Pete Buttigieg having champagne and caviar with in New York City. We'll get to that in a little bit. So I plan on going to South Bend possibly in the next 2 weeks. But before that, I wanted to speak with, I've already spoke with a couple residents there, but I wanted to speak with a resident to get a broader picture on the real Pete Buttigieg from South Bend, Indiana. We obviously know about his corrupt, frankly racist behavior when it comes to the black community, but Pete is claiming that he is the next generation. He is the next generation of leadership in Washington, D.C. How much is the text alert we could fund, as it's a great service? Jen would be able to tell you that more than me, but she tells me it's not cheap, so I'll get that information from you, Kelly. But this is a super chat. So if you're feeling super, let us know in the super chat. And if for those that are coming in late, we are going to talk about the UK election a little bit later, so I'm not ignoring it. But I do want to start with this interview closer to home. Super chat is going, and also for those new viewers, you could support this independent journalism. Sign up as a paying member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. If you want to fund in the field reporting, we got more videos from Marcus on the campaign trail, and I'm hitting the campaign trail in the next 2 weeks. So thank you. statuscoup.com/join. So Pete Buttigieg been billing himself as the next generation of leadership, but all I keep hearing from people that actually live in South Bend is his administration is your dime a dozen corrupt corporate Democrat administration, not just in police cover-ups, not just in how they treat black people, but just day-to-day business for the last 2 terms that Pete Buttigieg has been there. And you never actually hear this from the corporate media. So as the last few days have been going on, and you see Pete Buttigieg, specifically last night, doing his walk of shame out of these fundraisers, you got to see this. Let me show you this first. This is Pete Buttigieg last night coming out of a fundraiser. Activists found out where he was fundraising, and boy, does this look like a perp walk or not.
Wall Street Pete! 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 Wall Street.
Can't get enough. Can't get enough of Pete Buttigieg. I just can't get enough of Pete Buttigieg and his perp walk out of the lavish New York City fundraisers. So great for the activists who are finding where he's fundraising. They're not doing anything untoward. They're not doing anything violent. But scenes like this are how today you had #RefundPete start. It was the #1 trending item on Twitter I saw for hours. #RefundPete. People asking for refunds. People that actually bought this phony baloney progressivism are now seeing, oh no, this is just Joe Biden, 30 years younger, a little more handsome, can construct full sentences. So I saw a tweet by a woman in South Bend, Samantha, and it spoke to me, so I reached out to her, and boy, did I get quite an earful on the real Pete Buttigieg. So I wanted to interview her. I spoke with her a little while ago. We haven't edited it yet, so you'll see my actual green screen behind me. We'll edit it and make it pretty and put the graphics behind me for tomorrow, but for now, I just wanted to get it out there, so apologies that my side is just an empty green screen, but the message is important. So we spoke for about 35 minutes, but I think you are going to want to hear this. I implore you to share this interview because the media, as she will tell you, has not been asking these questions. The media, aside from very few, have not been covering this. Pete Buttigieg, it does not take long to peel back the onion on Pete Buttigieg. All you got to do is speak with some people in the community and you get a picture. This man would be an absolute disaster, not just as a nominee, but as president. This man is selling a bill of goods that is complete nonsense. Without further ado, here is South Bend resident Samantha Dowls. Remember, this is a super chat, so support us during the interview, and I'll talk to you on the flip side. Delighted to be joined by Samantha Dowls. You're a South Bend resident, and I came across you because obviously the Mayor Pete has been quite a news topic the last week or two. and I saw some activity on Twitter, and then I reached out to you because, to me, obviously there's been talk about his relationship or lack thereof relationship with the African American community in South Bend. There hasn't been as much talk just about what the heck has he done in South Bend, Indiana, as far as economic growth, closing the income gap, opportunity for low-income residents. And the more I've looked into it, it looks like this image he's portrayed as far as the next generation of leadership. If you look at how his administration and he has acted in South Bend, seems a lot like the old generation of leadership. So I wanted to start. He had his outgoing, address this past Monday in South Bend because his term is up as mayor, and there was quite a lot of heavy-handedness with that. Can you kind of tell us about that?
Yeah, thank you. It's an interesting observation you make, though, and making the point that it seems a lot like the old generation of leadership, because it most certainly is. The same people are still in control. Make no mistake about that. So Monday night was the Common Council meeting, the City Council meeting. It was a regular meeting. It actually went till midnight. It was pretty long. I think the public portion started at 7. So there were some items. There was an item on the agenda that outgoing Councilwoman Regina Williams Preston. It was a resolution she was presenting before the council to honor some local activists, not just activists, but groups and nonprofits. Quite a few people were named on that resolution. And early in the day, Monday, word got around that council president, who was reelected for another term, Tim Scott, had been emailing with the council. Some of those emails were leaked, and it was revealed that he basically was telling Regina that he was removing it from the agenda.
And just so the audience knows, she actually ran against Mayor Pete. Is that?
She did.
Or excuse me, she ran for mayor this time around.
Yes, she did. Mm-hmm. Yes, she did. So, of course, word got around to some local activists, and there was a lot of chatter. So we were discussing how we were going to handle that. To be quite honest, I had the agenda for the meeting, and I didn't even notice that Pete was going to be there at the time. So we kind of rallied the troops, and some of us prepared signs, and we were going to be present at the meeting. There was some last-minute communication that allegedly Councilwoman Sharon McBride, right before the council meeting started, had said that the item was back on the agenda and it was going to go forward and the council would vote on it publicly, the resolution to honor these people. So when we got to, let me back up. So I brought a friend of mine and my uncle with me to the meeting. These are both actually the friend I brought. She holds an elected seat in St. Joseph County in one of the townships. So when we were on our way there, I received a phone call from a local activist, a watchdog, if you will. And he said, hey, I'm here, and I just got stopped at the door by the St. Joseph County Sheriff's Department, who let me know that there will be no signs let into the building or the meeting. And of course, thank God, Jesse Davis is the activist I'm speaking of. He doesn't take anything lying down. So, he gave him some pushback, and he said, well, what are you talking about? That's our First Amendment right if we want to bring signs into a public meeting. And he said, if Jesse told the deputy, I guess, if you go through with trying to stop people from bringing signs in here, it's not going to go, it's not going to be good for you guys.
And was it known at this point that Mayor Pete would be speaking?
Yes, it was on the agenda. It was just me personally that didn't realize it at the time, I guess. I tend to get laser focused on things. So, so no, it was well known that Mayor Pete would be there. And I had prepared signs myself, and one of them was actually directed at Mayor Pete. So Jesse said, if you think you're going to stop some of these people from bringing signs in, it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to end well for you guys. To which the deputy responded, no, it's not going to end well for them. And he was putting his foot down. He said there are no signs going up that elevator, period. So Jesse,
And I assume that the signs were not so favorable to Pete?
At that point, they had no idea what the signs would say, really. Me and my friend were the ones who brought signs, and we weren't even there yet. So I think they anticipated. I did post some pictures of the signs as I was making them earlier in the day to my social media, and I know that law enforcement and the leadership of South Bend, the city of South Bend, they're aware of my social media. I'm quite vocal. So they probably had an idea there were some signs coming that wouldn't be favorable to Pete or some of the council representatives. So Jesse stepped outside and gave me a phone call. He said, hey, this is what's going on. I said, well, I'll be there in about 5 minutes and I'll have my signs with me. And, the signs are either going up to the council chambers or they'll go with me to the St. Joe County Jail. We can do this however they want. I said, I'm going to walk in there with my signs. And if they ask me, what's that, or try to take them, I'll say, it's my property. You don't have a warrant. And this is my First Amendment. Kick rocks. We're not going to have that. So that's what we were prepared for. My friend and my uncle and a couple of the other activists and community members who were en route who also received this news. We were prepared for it. And within about 10 minutes then of that phone call and prior to us arriving, we received another phone call from Jesse that said that Sheriff Redmond, this is his first year actually, he was elected last year. I guess he came down and some of Pete's people came down and said that it was a miscommunication. Of course, signs are allowed, no worries, whatever. But even let's give him the benefit of the doubt that this one deputy was misinformed on the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. It doesn't surprise me at all that happened.
Well, you have a backdrop because we're not just talking now about the local South Bend, Indiana City Council. You have Pete leading in some Iowa polls, leading in some New Hampshire polls. On Monday, he was getting a lot of national heat. He wouldn't release the client list for his clients that worked at McKinsey. He was, at that point, had not pledged to let press into his fundraisers. So, sounds like, from his campaign, they didn't want any more bad optics. But activists weren't having any of it. Does that kind of sound like that's what was going on?
Well, yeah, exactly. I don't mean to sound crass, but we don't really care that Pete's running for president. Pete has had problems here at home in South Bend the entire time he's been mayor. He's largely ignored the worst of them, racism and corruption within the government and the police department. So, these things aren't just going to go away now that Mayor Pete's term is up and he's moved on from South Bend. All these things are still here. It's still happening. The chief of police is still in place. The Common Council of South Bend, although many seats turned over in the elections last month, I have to be honest with you, the majority of the local activists in the area are not happy with the results of that election at all whatsoever. So, there's a lot we still are left here dealing with and facing the results of the investigation into the murder of Eric Logan by a South Bend police officer with a known racist history. That's been pushed back. They're telling us it could be even February before we hear anything, which a lot of us think is absurd. We have the South Bend police tape scandal that's been creeping along and for years, and we're nowhere near a resolution on that. So all of these things remain in place, even though Pete's going to ride off into the sunset for whatever reason.
And it's my understanding you supported Pete originally, but he kind of ran for mayor. A lot of the same themes you hear him running is presidential, like I'm young, new generation. He ran on a lot of those themes, and you supported him at first, but you've evolved because it seems like what he's done in South Bend, or more importantly, how he's operated, has kind of been as part of that old boys club. Can you kind of talk more about that?
Absolutely. That's exactly what it's been. So Pete obviously was a two-term mayor, and I didn't live in South Bend at the time he was originally elected. My family and I moved to Texas for 2 years, but we came back in 2011. We were thrilled when we came back after being gone for 2 years. We saw a lot of improvements downtown, a lot of things happening, and we thought, oh, wow, this new mayor, not only is he young and stylish and, seems to, really have his finger on the pulse of South Bend, and he's doing all these great things. So we were excited. We were, me and my two teenage daughters were his biggest fan at one point. I have pictures on my computer of Pete and his husband posing with my daughters at various events around South Bend. When Pete was here with when Mark Zuckerberg came to visit Pete, and they were live streaming on Facebook, driving around South Bend. My daughters and I hopped in the car, and we met him along some of the points, and we were super excited. And then, as time went on, though, I started to look around and realize, hey, man, there's a lot going on downtown. There's a lot of lights and new shiny buildings and a lot of high dollar housing and stuff like that going on around downtown. But I'm not seeing a whole lot happening in the neighborhoods. Crime has been at an all-time high.
Can I just want to dial down on one point, because we know Mark Zuckerberg has met with him recently. You're saying that Mark Zuckerberg came there before he ran for president?
Yeah, at least maybe 2 years ago.
Okay.
Maybe more than 2 years ago. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can look that up.
Yeah.
They were live on Facebook, and Pete gave him a tour of South Bend. Even took him to the juvenile justice facility, which is nothing to brag about.
Mm-hmm.
So I started looking around like, man, our neighborhoods are going to pot. About a year ago, I started a list, and it was a list of dead or critically wounded teenagers by gunfire in South Bend just since Mayor Pete took office. And the numbers and the names and the ages, it's astounding. To hear him, tooting his horn about all the great things he's done in South Bend, he's done a lot of really great things for people of his class. There are a lot of things to attract wealthy people who don't live here yet. And then thus he's turned his back on the generations of hardworking people who have built and sustained South Bend. And that's a real problem. You hear a lot about his 1,000 houses in 1,000 days or whatever that was. And it's been many years now since that's happened. So we now have the benefit of looking back on what the outcome of that was. And on one hand, you have Mayor Pete's administration and some of his supporters saying it's revitalization. When you look at it, it's really gentrification is what's happened. Everybody, you can go on Facebook Marketplace, go on Craigslist, go to the regular places on the internet where you might look for a rental home in your community. Do that in South Bend. I challenge you to do that in South Bend. The housing in South Bend just overall for low-income people is being completely wiped out. There was a story just over the summer. There's an apartment complex right down the street from where I live, down Western Avenue. It's called Western Manor. It's low-income apartments, lower-income apartments. They're older and major need of repairs, absolutely. And, come to find out over the summer, some investment group has now purchased it. They jacked the rent up effective September 1st by about $200 per unit. The residents called on their councilman, Oliver Davis, and Mayor Pete to help them. And there were some press conferences and there was some talking about it and some outrage about it. But as per usual in South Bend, everything went through. The rent was increased. And for the first 2 weeks of September, every time I drove past there on my way to the local Kroger, there was just moving truck after moving truck. The dumpsters were overflowing with people just discarding their items and getting the heck out of there. And where did they go? Where did they go? There was nowhere for those people to go. Notre Dame bought up, you might want to cut this part out, but I'm kind of rambling, but Notre Dame, at one point they bought up a lot of houses and neighborhoods, lower income as well, demolished them, and now it's just multi-million-dollar houses all over that area. Where did those people go? So it's just displacement after displacement of South Bend's low income and people of color and minorities. And then you couple that with the South Bend Police Department and the racism and corruption is so deeply embedded and has been for so long in the South Bend Police Department. And it's astounding that even with Mayor Pete being on the national stage and running for president, that we're still just getting the same slap in the face when it comes to issues of corruption and racism in our police department. And ultimately ended up with the death of a black man this past June. Eric Logan was killed by Sergeant Ryan O'Neill, and Ryan O'Neill chose not to turn his body camera on. And when the city of South Bend and the South Bend Police Department released Sergeant O'Neill's personnel file to the media, there were missing documents. And I know there were missing documents because I had possession of those documents, namely 2 write-ups about 2 white officers who had reported O'Neill back in 2008 for making racist remarks. Why were these left out of his personnel file? And I know they were because when I started posting them on social media, the media started contacting me. Hey, where did you get those documents? What is that? Where did that come from? So then the city was forced to respond to that. And of course, it was some cockamamie story about how, oh, we investigated it back when it happened. The two brand new officers who reported O'Neill took polygraph tests and were found to have been lying. So that's why we left it out. It was not substantiated. Yet both of those officers who were rookies back in 2008, who reported their training officer for making racist remarks, both have been promoted. One just made lieutenant last month. So we get all these answers from the city that just don't make sense. And that's how Pete's administration does business. They just lie. And
I want to ask you,
you gotta believe it.
I want to ask you about that because most journalists who go there, and I'll be coming there probably in the next few weeks, they don't ask these specific questions because they're deathly afraid of losing access to the campaign. I don't really give a damn. I probably won't get access after this, but
yeah, they don't acknowledge me either.
Yeah, I've been told it goes a little worse than that. I'd love to know if you have any knowledge in terms of kind of some bought and paid for relationships where there's been some money exchanges under the table, those kinds of things. We see it in Flint, Detroit. A lot of cities have corruption where officials that have supported Mayor Pete have, gotten some kickbacks, shall we say, for that, because he's painting himself as, I'm from outside of Washington. They're corrupt in Washington. They do things, in back rooms, and I'm fresh and I don't come from there. But it seems like a lot of the things that he's criticized, I've heard from multiple residents, his administration is guilty of. Can you kind of talk about that?
Absolutely. That's exactly how Pete conducts business here in South Bend. There's a local activist and pastor, Mario Sims, who's very vocal on Facebook as well, and he calls it out. There's members of the Board of Public Safety, and the Board of Public Safety is the governing body over the police and fire department. So any charges of, wrongdoing made against the police or disciplinary measures that need to be taken against a police officer are to go before this Board of Public Safety, which is appointed by the mayor. And he, Mayor Pete was so proud of himself and took every opportunity to tell people that he had a majority-minority Board of Public Safety that he appointed in South Bend. But nobody really knew who these people were. In fact, when there was a town hall at Washington High School over here on the west side, I think it was less than a week after Eric Logan died, Mayor Pete and the Chief of Police, Scott Ruskowski, sat on that stage and thought that they were going to hide behind the Board of Public Safety and thought that they were going to silence us all and hush us all up when we were demanding answers and demanding action and demanding discipline up to and including termination, possible criminal charges. They thought they would hide behind this, we don't have that power. All that power is in the hands of the Board of Public Safety. And that's all they would really say on it. And I was in the audience, and I had no problem. I wasn't going to stand up and wait my turn to be handed the microphone because I already know how that was going to go. So I sat right in my seat, and I said, who makes up the Board of Public Safety, and what are their credentials? I knew who was on the board. I knew, their names, their occupations. I knew the history behind how they came to be appointed to that board. We have a pastor who was given a piece of property where he now operates his church. Even the leader of the local NAACP, Michael Patton, he was given $500,000, I think, by the South Bend Heritage Foundation to build some houses, and we've seen no results. Where's the money? And then, on the flip side of that, then we see when, what is the NAACP in South Bend doing? Are they standing behind these minority officers that have left in droves the South Bend Police Department? There are several minority officers who have left the South Bend Police Department during Mayor Pete's term who have filed discrimination lawsuits against the city. And where's the NAACP? Where's Michael Patton? They're standing up at the podium with Mayor Pete and signing off on everything, rubber stamping everything. They are not standing with the Black community in South Bend. And we see that over and over again.
It sounds like they're getting some funding to do that.
Absolutely. And they're doing it in broad daylight in front of everybody's faces. One thing I want to mention about the Board of Public Safety is during that town hall, because I pressed Pete and I pressed him, and he finally broke down. He didn't name their names, but he said, we have a businessman, we have a former police officer, we have a former firefighter, whatever. And he admitted that there was a vacancy on the Board of Public Safety, which I hadn't even realized that. So it was obviously a long-standing vacancy on this Board of Public Safety. So he admitted that. And one of the things that the community demanded right then and there at the town hall was that he open that vacant seat for public application. And they did. They accepted applications. There was a deadline. I think it was sometime mid-August. The deadline came. There were applicants, qualified applicants. And inexplicably, the city extends the deadline. Okay, fine. Extend the deadline. Did you not get the candidate you wanted? What's going on? Deadline was extended. And then the next thing we know, they're announcing that they have chosen the person to fill the vacancy on the Board of Public Safety. And it is a Latina woman, and I apologize, I don't know her name. It's a Latina woman who is employed by the city of South Bend in the Human Resources Department. A slap in the face, an absolute slap in the face. And this is what you get from Pete. He will hear you. He will listen. He will hear you. He'll listen to you with that smug look on his face, and then he will turn around and his administration will do it seemingly make the worst possible choice. I mean, just go in the complete opposite direction. And the city offers no explanation. I received a direct message on Facebook from one of those applicants. And this is a woman that I've never talked to before in my life. And she said, I applied for that position. I applied during the first round before the original application cutoff date. And I'm going to misquote it. I would have to look it up. I didn't have it prepared. But basically, this woman has a bachelor's, a master's, and a doctorate in public safety. She is not employed by the city of South Bend. And she says, so they certainly didn't pick the most qualified candidate. I know that a former South Bend police officer, 22-year veteran of the United States military, former Common Council candidate, also applied for that position. He also happens to be an African American, and he didn't even make it to an interview round. He also has a pending lawsuit against the city and the South Bend Police Department, but that's a story for another day.
Well, it's interesting because he's running nationally, and obviously he's doing these, champagne and caviar fundraisers. But he's talking about this broad coalition he's building. It doesn't seem to be reflected in the polls. In South Bend, did you ever see him out, like, with the people? Like in the neighborhoods, not downtown where it's being gentrified, but like in the trenches with the people? Because at least for the last 2 years, maybe 3, he's been trying to run for DNC chair, then setting establishing relationships to run for president, and now running for president. I don't mean this humorously. I'm just asking, what is his qualifications to run for president? It doesn't sound like, other than dime a dozen gentrification, which I could name you 50 other mayors who have done that. What is the big thing he's done in South Bend?
There isn't a big thing he's done in South Bend other than continue on with, the system as it's been. We refer to the St. Joseph County Democratic Party as the machine here. It is a machine. I don't believe that the majority of the Democrats in leadership in this county are true Democrats. They certainly don't behave like the Democratic Party. They certainly behave and operate and run the county and the city like a Republican. And what do I know? But that's just my opinion. I don't see anything that qualifies Pete to run the country or be president, other than clearly he has access to the 1%, to the elite, to the money, and we all know how that works. It's business as usual. So I guess if that's what you're looking for, if you're looking for maybe a younger, more stylish, more attractive gay Donald Trump, I guess you got it, because that's just my opinion. I've been saying, even before Pete announced he was running for president, I've been telling people he is a racist, corrupt fraud, period.
And why do you view him as racist? Obviously, we know he's had tense relations with the black community, but obviously being racist is a step further. Has he done or not done things that you view as racist?
Well, he supports and protects racist police, period. It's not just with the Eric Logan case. There's been many cases, just the South Bend Police Department. There was an 18-year-old young man. It's the Franklin case. You can look that up. And matter of fact, the South Bend Police Department has the entire Franklin case file on their Transparency Hub. It is the only piece of litigation that they've published to the Transparency Hub. But he was a, I think, 18-year-old Black man who was sleeping in his bed at his mother's house, and a couple South Bend Police Department officers kicked in the door, raided the home with no warrant, and assaulted him. And I mean assaulted him, tased him, beat the living daylights out of him. Turns out he was the wrong guy. The Franklin family sued and won. They were awarded an $18 settlement. And then the city of South Bend, under Mayor Pete, sued his family to recoup $1,500 in legal fees, which, I mean, they won their civil rights case against the South Bend Police Department.
What do you mean? What do you mean an $18 settlement? That sounds.
He got $1 for each count. He was awarded not settlement. He was awarded an $18 judgment by the jury. $18. You should look that case up. And there's been several instances of just outright racism and corruption within South Bend Police Department. Not only that, but it goes into the county as well. There's the case of Jihad Vasquez in South Bend, a 16-year-old Black boy who, this was just a handful of years ago, definitely under Mayor Pete's administration, who was found hanging Klan style on the south side of South Bend the day after he was suspended from school for getting into a fight with a white student who had called him the N-word. The white student's family is known to be Klan. I'll just say it, absolutely known to be Klan. And, you know, the county, the coroner, who was previously the sheriff, I think he was previously a chief of police. He was appointed chief of South Bend Police for a short time. He was the St. Joseph County coroner at the time that Jihad Vasquez was murdered. He has no medical background, the coroner. And he ruled Jihad Vasquez's death a suicide. There was no autopsy. They had his body cremated the next day within 24 hours. Never told his mother that she had the right to demand an autopsy. Told the mother, I know a suicide when I see one. And that was it, case closed. So the mother then, went to Pete at a city council meeting and pleaded with him, help me get an investigation into my son's death. And Pete, gave her, said, call my office, call and make an appointment. She's called, she's emailed, so have activists on her behalf. And Pete never met with her. Pete turned his back on her.
What was her son's name?
Jihad Vasquez.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And he was found hanging in a Klan style, you said?
We say hanging Klan style because that's exactly what it was. I mean, he was hanging from it was like kind of like an electrical tower, and he wasn't that far off the ground. I mean, you'll have to look up the case, but there's a lot of evidence, as far as like his belongings and where they were, what was missing. And he had belongings missing that have never turned up. I think one of them might have even been his cell phone. The case any 16-year-old found hanging on the south side of anybody's town, that death needs to be investigated fully and completely. You can't just have the coroner with no medical background say, I know a suicide when I see one, and have the boy's body cremated the next day with no autopsy. That's absurd.
I mean, when you look at 90 minutes away, Chicago, you have Rahm Emanuel covering up Laquan McDonald's death. It's different, but it doesn't sound too different, where you have a mayor basically covering up for his police department.
Time and time and time again. Yes.
And what would you say? Because, the media, is the national media looking into any of this? Because there has been journalists on the ground there. Do they ask about what he's done in South Bend? What are they doing there? Because I've seen CNN reporters and other reporters there, but it doesn't particularly seem like any of this is being reported.
It seems like the mainstream national media is contacting Pete's campaign and saying, hey, we're coming to town. We want to talk to people who support you. Can we have a list of people who support you? And that's who they're talking to. There is, the Young Turks Investigates. Jonathan Larson has been here many times. Please visit his website and the Young Turks Investigates website. And their YouTube channel. He does a live stream every day, and he's discussed Mayor Pete in South Bend, and he's written many, many pieces. He has, he's really dug in, and he's uncovered documents that the South Bend Common Council claims they've never seen regarding the South Bend police tapes, and a questionnaire that Pete's lawyers had the whistleblower fill out. The local media says, well, we've never seen that. The Common Council says we've never seen that, but Jonathan Larson at the Young Turks has it. And he's done a lot of reporting, but outside of it's starting to pick up a little, since Pete's been having problems with the black voter thing that have really been making headlines. But that's just been in the last week, and I don't really see, the mainstream media grabbing a hold like that. I don't. And it's puzzling on one hand, but on the other hand, when you see who he's getting his money from, and where these fundraisers are being held, well, that kind of explains it all, doesn't it?
And while he was mayor, did he get a lot of support from Chamber of Commerce type people, wealthy people? Obviously, Chicago's nearby. Who was funding him while he was mayor?
Well, it's hard to say because his campaign, they destroyed the 2011 campaign finance reports, which is perfectly legal to do. So it's hard to tell. There are some names and some records out there, and it's all, big name business folks, names I don't care to drop, but it's out there. There have been stories done on it. Jonathan Larson, the Young Turks Investigates, he broke all of that down. It's obvious that he's always...
So you just casually dropped that his campaign destroyed his campaign finance documents?
Yes.
So those are not findable online?
No. They're not findable anywhere.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. So it just seems like this is a media concocted figure, and if you don't even have to peel back that far. It's the same old corruption, just with a prettier, younger face.
Absolutely, 100%.
Unbelievable. Well, thank you for taking the time. I'm going to be in South Bend soon, fortunately, so I'll talk to you and others. And I'll ask you one last question. If he were to win the nomination, you think he'd beat Trump? To me, it seems like this is the perfect foil for Trump to basically cancel out Trump's corruption, because Pete's corruption is right there to be exposed.
I absolutely think he would beat Trump if he becomes the nominee. Absolutely.
Oh, he would beat Trump.
I think he would. I wouldn't have said that before Donald Trump was elected. I would have said absolutely not. That's absurd. There's no way. But now that we see Donald Trump did it. He pulled it off and he was elected. However that came about, I'd say nothing is impossible. And I think he could beat him because... And I think that's exactly the reason why these people chose him, whoever it was that chose Pete Buttigieg of all people, to try to get the nomination. I mean, just look at him. They thought he'll appeal to millennials. He'll appeal to, LGBTQ, and certainly he'll appeal to the black voters. Womp, womp, womp. I don't know who lied to those people, but, again, it was probably a matter of, they did their study groups and their focus groups, and they rounded up the 10 or 12 black people in South Bend who do support Pete Buttigieg and said, look, we come with black support too. No, he does not.
And it seems like those black figures, a lot of them have gotten kind of sweetheart deals from the administration.
Absolutely. Councilwoman Sharon McBride, she was the councilwoman at the center of the microphone controversy. At the event, we don't even know what that event was. It was announced that some black leaders were going to gather to show their support for Pete. They made it very clear at the beginning of the event that this was in no way an endorsement of Pete, but then they went on to basically endorse him and whatnot. So as you may or not know, a Black Lives Matter activist, Igor Rodriguez, he kind of disrupted it, ended up with the microphone. It was wrestled away from him. But Sharon McBride, she, in my opinion, she's a prime example of bought and paid for support for Pete Buttigieg. She was a city employee for many, many years.
Just so the audience knows, she is African American?
She is, yes.
Okay.
Sharon McBride is African American, yes. She is married to a South Bend police officer. A lot of people don't know that. I don't know if they're still legally married, but she is either the current or former spouse of South Bend police officer. Both of them have filed racial discrimination lawsuits against the city of South Bend. Sharon McBride, like I said, she was an employee of the city of South Bend for many years in many different departments. There have been allegations of wrongdoing on her part. possibly even some theft or abuse of her position within the city. And after a period of time, when the city terminated her finally, right around that time, there was an EEOC suit filed. She filed against the city on racial discrimination. And then right around the time she dropped that suit, she is hired by St. Joseph County as executive director of community corrections, having no education, experience, or background in corrections or law enforcement. And then next thing you know, Ms. McBride is caucused into the vacant Common Council seat for the 3rd District. So she was appointed by caucus in, I think, early 2018. Again, where did this come from? She'd never really been active in politics. She wasn't a community activist. She was simply, a former city employee, wife of a police officer, and now somehow managed to land a position with the county, an executive position in community corrections. And now we turn around and she's being appointed to the Common Council. She did win re-election in her district last month in November, but I do always point out this fact. There was an opponent against McBride in the primaries. Her name was Barbara Mattson. She filed the paperwork, all the appropriate paperwork, to run in the primary, and that was the extent of her participation in the primary. But her name did still go on the ballot. She did not campaign. She did not participate in debates. She didn't buy a sign. She did nothing. And she got 321 votes to McBride's 1,100 in the primary. So, then that's another sad fact around South Bend is people don't vote in South Bend. Poor people of color simply don't vote. And the people in power, the machine, they know that and they capitalize on that. So it's no surprise to me that Sharon McBride, of all people, is now traveling with Mayor Pete, trying to convince people that Black people at home support him. She owes him. She owes him big.
This is what they call the next generation of leadership. Unbelievable. Thank you for taking the time. I'm sure we'll be in touch. I'm planning on coming there shortly. So thank you and be well.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to meeting you.
Okay.
I mean, where do you even start? I always tell you, there is an information war in the United Corporations of America, and people like Sam, a wonderful woman, great activist, are basically being knocked off the battlefield. I mean, what other way can you say it? If a quarter of the important information she just gave on who this man really is was out there, do you think he'd be even competing in Iowa or New Hampshire? He would be laughed out of the room or shamed out of the room, like the neoliberal version of Mitt Romney. I mean, he is, to me, the neoliberal version of Mitt Romney. And to tell you the truth, that didn't take a lot of effort. I saw Sam involved in some tweeting in the last few days. I reached out to her. We were DMing, and we just did an interview. It's not hard to find it. Well, some cases it's hard. Jen and I are working on a major story right now. And by the way, I just got a huge on-the-record statement today for that story from a very influential figure. So stay tuned for that. But this is all out in the open. But you heard her. The media, who's in South Bend, CNN, Washington Post, New York Times, they're basically just asking the campaign, hey, can you give us some people that like Pete so we could do a puff piece here? It's more like, it's more like public relations they're doing for this fraud. So we're going to cut up that interview into a couple parts. We'll post it tomorrow, with my graphic so it looks a little better. But it's unbelievable. And that's why I want to get on the ground in South Bend as soon as possible. So just to give you the full what's going on behind the scenes, have a camera person just set up my studio here. That person is now working on the live view to make sure they know how to use it, and he and I are going to be hitting the road probably in the next couple days. So I'm excited about that. Can someone say her first and last name? Sam. Let me make sure I got it right. Sam. Samantha Dowls. Samantha Dowls. So here you go. You could follow her on Twitter too. Let me get her account for you. But yeah, please share this interview because it's important. Whether you like Bernie, whether you don't like Bernie, people need to know who you are supporting there. Because I think this person is dangerous for this country. And judging by, I tweeted it out, but last night while he was having champagne and caviar with these fat cats in New York City, he got wonderful applause when he said, I think the Democrats need to retake the mantle as the party of fiscal responsibility. He got huge applause. Just what we need. Just what we need. Austerity with a nice face to go with it. Because that's what UK, well, Boris Johnson's not exactly a nice face, but that's what the UK just voted for. I mean, when I came live, unless the exit polls are very, very wrong, Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party in the UK has just won a resounding election over the Labour Party and Jeremy Corbyn. I'll give you my thoughts in a minute about that. But you're voting for a Republican with a nice face. There's no there. And frankly, not to diminish at all the terrible things he's doing with two black people and his police department and the terrible things they're doing. But frankly, you listen to Sam, who's on the front lines there as an activist. I tell you, and I felt this way when I was at the Young Turks, and I feel it more now. Please post the interview. I will be donating a big sum if you post the interview. I just missed it. I will be posting it. We're going to split it up because people have short attention spans and it's about 40 minutes. But we will be posting the full interview probably in 2 parts tomorrow. And thank you. Feel free to donate. Or, more importantly, become a member. For those of you that have been on the fence, we're trying to grow here. Statuscoup.com/join. Sign up for as low as $5 to $10 a month, but you could also donate for sure. What's amazing to me is literally this guy is billing himself as some new thing that's separate from the old way of doing things in Washington. Clearly, he's exactly the same. Worse, you got unqualified people getting positions and because they're getting kickbacks. You got the NAACP who's straight up. There's some corruption there too. Basically standing up for this guy when he's covering up black men getting killed by the police. When he's covering up a black guy getting hung. Who apparently my former outlet, the Young Turks, kudos to them. Seems like they're investigating one thing at least, because they don't do a lot of investigative reporting these days, but apparently they covered it. This is happening in an American city, and nobody's talking about this? How is it that a black kid got hung, Klan style, and it's not in the national media that this guy was the mayor and has done nothing? The family has asked him to do something about this. He's done nothing. Oh, so he's going to be president? Clearly. There's going to be police department reforms with Mayor Pete as president. So, I think it's a disaster. Ryan, I just did shout out Larson. I got no problem. Hey, if TYT does something good, kudos to them. I haven't seen his reporting, so I'll have to check that out, but I don't have a problem. If they do something good, that's great. I just don't see enough of it, frankly. At least the main show is 24/7 Trump, but if one of their channels is doing something good, perfect. So, yeah, honestly, this is just from a Skype interview, so I definitely want to get on the ground there. And some of you say, Jordan, you're covering Mayor Pete too much. You know, don't waste your time. Focus on Biden. Well, Marcus just covered multiple Biden rallies, so status quo is bigger than me. Marcus is on the ground. We're going to play one of those interviews. But I think that you got to cover Pete because at the end of the day, elections in America are very much about narrative. It's not about policy. Obviously, Bernie's people care about policy, but a lot of people vote on the narrative they're being fed by the corporate media because the majority of voters are not diehard into politics like you and I. They're just tuning in maybe a few weeks before Iowa, right? So they are going to be paying attention to what's being fed to them. And if this guy wins Iowa, which it is possible because people in Iowa are being duped, then, oh, you think the media is showering him with love? Now, they are going to literally build a statue of him in New Hampshire if he wins Iowa. And CNN is hosting a debate before Iowa. That ain't good if you want real information. MSNBC and NBC, I believe, are hosting the next debate. So, not a good thing. Raisinette 35 Jordan fell in love with your reporting during your TYT days. Thank you. I hope we could stay in love. I've been doing some reporting here, and for those of you, all I got to say is I know everybody wants it now. Today I got an on the record statement that I've been working on for a few weeks from a former government official that I really needed for this story Jen and I are working on, and it is fire. So stay tuned. We think that story will be out by the end of this year, so we're excited about that. So, and if you missed it, here's Mayor Pete's perp walk last night after his fundraiser in New York. Some activists caught up with him. Here's the fine.
Wall Street Pete! 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 Wall Street.
But the amazing thing about this, and kudos to those activists, and thank you, Rennie, $10 in the super chat, and thank you we got a couple super chats when we played the interview. Thank you, Rennie. Keep it coming in the super chat. What's amazing to me, he's been doing these lavish fundraisers for like 9 months. This is not the first lavish fundraiser. This is probably the 50 to 100th lavish fundraiser he's been doing. So he has gotten away for months with this fraudulence, pretending he's some new generation cat when he's literally going around, I don't want to be crude, but kissing the ring of the bankers, big pharma, big oil, big real estate, Silicon Valley. Him and Mark Zuckerberg apparently love each other very much. So finally, we're finding out where they are. We get at least one reporter in there, but you got to, unfortunately, the state of the information war is you're only going to get the truth from activists. That's why I don't go to interview experts or government officials. I go to speak with activists because that's where you learn the truth. But also, you learn the truth from activists on the ground, but also activists that show up at these protests. So, kudos to those. So, we're going to be covering Mayor Pete plenty, but I want to move on. Before I get into the UK election, for those of you that haven't seen this, because YouTube's been not notifying you, Marcus has done some really outstanding reporting out in the field lately. We're going to be sending him to Iowa for a few weeks right after Christmas. We definitely want him to spend Christmas with his kitties, but after that he's going to be going to Iowa for us, so he's getting a little warm-up right now in New Hampshire. This interview is very, 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 very symbolic of how brainwashed a lot of the older generation is. There's a lot of older viewers that watch us, so we're not talking about everybody. But this interview with this woman, who's a lovely woman, but God, I wanted to scream. I'm going to play some of it for you, and we'll talk about it on the backside. Thank you, Ryan Corinth, $4.99. You and TYT Investigates are the only outlets investigating Pete. Keep up the good work. Thank you, and kudos to them if they're doing investigative work on Pete. I haven't seen it, but I'll definitely check it out. Let's take a look at this one of Marcus's interviews from a Joe Biden rally.
All right, Marcus Ely here for Status Coup, and I am here with Sheila Emery, was it?
Enright.
Sheila Enright. Can you talk to me a little bit about what brought you in for the Biden event tonight?
Well,
Or this morning?
it goes back a ways. I'm from Delaware originally, so I've known Joe Biden for I don't know how many years, but a lot. And I was excited when he was vice president. And now that he's running for president, I think it's really important because he is a person who brings people together. And I don't know how much I should say about how much I don't like the present president.
Oh yeah, no, we're a socialist outlet almost. Like we're very far left, so you're fine.
Well, I can't. I've always been interested in politics, and never in my life did I dream that we would have a president like Donald Trump. And I'm supporting Biden, but I will vote for any Democrat, and I think that's what every Democrat should do. I think the Democratic Party has been too purist. Uh, Bernie voters didn't vote for Hillary. I love Bernie too.
I'm so sorry. I have to because it's my job as a journalist to correct you on just the little factual error there. But actually, more Bernie voters voted for Hillary than Hillary voters voted for Obama in '08. So like, and Bernie went out and campaigned more than anybody. So that's actually a false narrative that's being pushed by the media in general. When you look at the data and the facts, that's actually not the case.
I'm glad to hear that because I also love Bernie, and I happened to have gone to see Bernie 2 weeks ago in Nashua. So,
what did you think of Bernie when he was out here?
I love Bernie. I don't, and I would consider myself on the socialist side of things, but I'm not sure him identifying as a socialist, it's possible to be elected. I know people say, can a woman be elected? Whatever. I don't know. I have to run. Because everybody's coming in.
That's all right. They got your seat. All right, cool.
My grandchildren, I want to make sure they got their seats. Anyway, no, I'm glad to hear that. I try to fact check everything, but it's hard to keep up with today.
I do it for a living, and it's a lot of work for me. So I completely understand. Now, specifically speaking on Biden, I don't know if you saw it, but we had the incident recently where the gentleman was trying to question him on the stage, and he basically berated this man in return. A lot of people felt like that was very bully-like, and it was very much something a bully would do when confronted with simple questions. And considering that that's something that you don't like from Trump, how do you feel seeing that from Biden?
Okay, I didn't like seeing that from Biden because I don't think that behavior is very presidential for anybody. But I think he's always been a family man. As you know, he didn't live in Washington, D.C. He took the train back and forth all those years he was a senator so he could be with his sons. And I think he was really angry that someone was attacking his family. But yeah, I wouldn't think it was his finest moment for sure.
So primaries are today, right now. Who you going for?
Elizabeth Warren.
And what about Elizabeth Warren? Gets you excited? I know she's another neighboring state candidate from Mass.
I am from Massachusetts, and 2020 is going to be the 100th anniversary of women getting the vote. And wouldn't it be great to have a woman president and to finally have the Equal Rights Amendment passed?
Only 100 years later,
But I like them all. The only Democratic candidate I'm not sure of, well, we don't count Tulsi Gabbard as a Democrat, do we?
She said that. I didn't. I found it funny, not gonna lie.
But the only Democrat I'm not sure of is Mayor Pete. He's a good speaker. I also really like Cory Booker. He's a wonderful speaker too. I was sad to see Kamala Harris drop out of the race. But being from Massachusetts, I really like Elizabeth Warren.
And what in specific about Elizabeth Warren do you like?
Well, I liked her from that she's worked on consumer protection to start with.
The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that got all that money back for all those folks.
Right. And I'm not crazy about her campaign either, because I think it's awful that I don't think people realize how much $1 billion is. But each billion is 1,000 millions.
I just can't. I think somebody needs to a neurologist or some kind of doctor needs to start a study where they take people's MRIs of people's brains. Let's say starting at age 21, and they take those people's brains scans every year and make sure these people consume a lot of corporate news like CNN, Washington Post, New York Times, and I'd like to see how their brain and what lights up, how it evolves over the years, because I really think, frankly, the older generation, again, not generalizing, because a lot of older progressives out there, particularly in the audience right now, they are the problem. These people, lovely woman, seems nice, are so uninformed. And, Marcus is still in that kind of respect your elders, don't go too aggressively. I would have been a little less cordial, I guess you could say. I wouldn't hammer her over the head, but lady, I mean, what are you talking about? First of all, you're a woman, older woman, you want a woman president, that's fine. But if you want to beat Trump, right, I'd like to know what exactly about Joe Biden do you think is going to beat Trump? Because you did just see what happened in 2016 with Joe Biden with different body parts. So if you want to beat Trump, what exactly do you think in Biden, who is the same candidate, just a different gender, how is he going to beat Trump? Also, frankly, this shows you exactly what repeat the lie does. The media has put out, especially their accomplices, the blue check Twitterazzi, has put out there, these journalists, that Bernie, let Hillary Clinton down, took too long to endorse her, didn't do enough, when it's the exact opposite. He literally risked his political career and a backlash of his supporters by endorsing her in the first place, and then went around and did more events for her than Hillary Clinton did for Barack Obama in 2008. So, there you go. Yeah, I guess Kim saying Marcus is black, he can't be aggressive. I'm not saying, confront the woman. I'm just saying, he's a little bit more respect the elders. But that's a fair point, that he's black and, obviously, optically, they are held to a different standard. So, fair point, Kim. But what's annoying to me the most about voters like this is they feel in their head that they know so much more than these young people. Oh, these young people, we love your enthusiasm, but you just don't know anything. No, you're the one that doesn't know anything. Marcus did it in a respectful way, but he just pointed out one thing you're 100% wrong on. And I'm sure if we talk to voters like that a little bit longer, we'll be able to identify 5 or 6 other facts that are brainwashed in them. It is corporate media brainwashing. And he interviewed, it was amazing to me, he interviewed a couple of teenagers who, they're not like Biden supporters, I guess. Biden's campaign wouldn't let them bring in corn pops, but they're also kind of naive about Biden. This is what you get when you have corporations seizing the information airwaves. This is what you get. By the way, I'm not criticizing Marcus. I'm just saying he was very nice and respectful, and I don't know if I'd be able to be that nice. Because I think voters like her are why we can't have nice things. That's the truth. Sure, she's a lovely woman, good grandparent, parent, whatever, but voters like her, who should have the wisdom to see the political tea leaves changing, are so misinformed. And instead of, in their free time, consuming new information, learning, growing, they're just taking in the same old nonsense. So, kudos to Marcus. Great interviews. They're all up on the channel right now. So definitely check them out. Share them. Yeah, Jordan, I'd be meaner. I'm not saying be disrespectful, but I guess I would be a little bit more push back a little bit more on some of the things she was saying. I also don't I don't know what this whole thing can't call Tulsi a Democrat. Well, I would say to that, considering the Democratic Party's popularity is at an all-time low, considering Bernie Sanders blew up in 2016 and is growing now by calling out the Democratic Party, isn't it a good thing that Tulsi isn't a capital D Democrat and challenges the party? Because the capital D Democrats who say don't challenge the party are losing to a reality TV star. So that's what I would say to that. So, great reporting in the field from Marcus. By the way, money don't grow on trees. We are totally grassroots funded. So, if you want to see more of Marcus, fund us. Statuscoup.com/join. Become a member. We want to get to 1,000 by the end of this year. It's looking tough, but not impossible, but definitely a climb. But obviously, we got to get to 800 first. So definitely, if you've been on the fence, support our reporting. You can become a member for as low as a cup of coffee a month. We got $5 a month, $10 a month, $20 a month, or $179 annually plans. A lot of you are already members, so thank you. I hope you join us for our monthly member calls. You also get other bonus content. Jen and I are putting together something for the end of the year, kind of as a member thank you. So definitely sign up if you can. So let's get to the UK election. If you guys didn't know, I was actually just in London for the first time a week and a half ago. So I was there just as the home stretch of the UK election. I don't want to pretend to know British politics as well as I do American politics, but I know enough. One thing that I noticed in the UK, and I mean, it's not a surprise because we have a corporate media here, but the media in Great Britain, which there's a lot less of it. You have BBC is the main one, and then a couple other channels. The media is unrelentingly neoliberal and corporate. Similar to what we have here, but I mean, the campaign against Jeremy Corbyn in the UK was just unrelenting. I mean, I'm not saying Bernie doesn't get it bad, but Corbyn, it's a whole nother beast, what Corbyn was getting there. And it looks like, don't get me wrong, I don't think it's all the media, frankly. I do like Corbyn, but it seems to me the Brexit vote, I believe, had 60 to 70% turnout a couple of years ago. He didn't really take a position on Brexit. He ran on many progressive things, but he kind of was on the fence a little bit about Brexit because Labour was on the fence about Brexit. Yes, I did go to London without you. I'm sorry. So I think that really hurt him because, I mean, according to the polls, Labour is, Boris Johnson and the Conservatives have won a resounding victory. It looks like they have gotten a pretty comfortable majority. Let's look at the numbers here. Conservatives 368, Labor 191. So conservatives have kind of wiped the floor. And I think a lot of this is about the Brexit vote. I do think the media painting him as anti-Semitic obviously didn't help, but this would be like, healthcare being the top issue and Bernie Sanders saying like, oh, I'm thinking about it, I'll let you know. So I do think, frankly, whether you're for Brexit, against it, I think Jeremy Corbyn could have said, I'm for Brexit, but not Boris Johnson handling it. I'm for Brexit, I'm for leaving, but Boris Johnson is going to sell you that Brexit is pro-worker and Brexit is great for, the forgotten Brits, and then sell the NHS and everything else down the river. I think that would have been a message that would gravitate, but as far as I could see, he didn't take a position. And I also think, frankly, I don't want to be the person, if they call it mansplaining or white-splaining, what would they call a American doing that to the Brits? Brexit-splaining? I don't want to Brexit-splain, but it is unbelievable to me. Some of these exit polls show that the British citizens trusted Boris Johnson, who literally, in words, has said, I love the banks, I love the banks. It's unbelievable to me that they have said in polls that just came out in the exit polls, pond-splaining, that they trust him more on the National Health Service. That is a disastrous decision that a lot of people are going to pay for. Boris Johnson, it came out that in trade discussions with President Trump, has pledged to basically open up the NHS to big pharma in America, which is going to more and more privatize the NHS, which is a source of honor in the UK. The NHS is something that's beloved to UK citizens. So, obviously, this also has implications for America. We know that Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, some of these corporate loving nannies are going to say, look, the British version of Bernie just got creamed. This is what's going to happen in a general election. Honestly, this has nothing to do with the American presidential election. We do not have a referendum issue like Brexit. We have a lot of issues that are important, particularly climate change has really increased as a major issue, that Bernie Sanders in polls is trusted number one on climate change. He's trusted number one on healthcare. He's up there number two on the economy and other things. So the media is going to try and paint this as, buy it, you little kiddies, the rest of you that are going for Bernie, look what a socialist gets you over in the UK. Don't let them fool you. Has nothing to do with it. Yet nothing to do with us. But I would be depressed if I live in the UK, because it only took a day or two for me to see, other than healthcare, the same neoliberal attack on workers, on your money, on your pensions, on everything has been going on in Great Britain for the last 30 years. I mean, outside of London, which is a wealthy city, people's wages are flat, working more hours, many people working more jobs. So that's why I say this is a global fight against neoliberalism. And these capitalists, they ain't giving up without a fight. And they have an army behind them. They have the media. That's why it's so important, not just supporting status quo, but supporting alternative media. That's why I interviewed Max Blumenthal. That's why I try to introduce you to other alternative media, because it is important to not just like the old ladies that are brainwashed by CNN that Marcus just showed you. It's important to inform more and more people so that they could then inform people. Because I've always found in my travels around the country, most people are not lacking compassion. Most people don't want to see half of their citizens living, half of their neighbors in poverty. Most people do care that people are sitting out there in the winter freezing to death. Most people just really don't know the full length of the damage here. Most people truly do not know. But I do think Jeremy Corbyn made a mistake politically. I understand it's different there. It's a coalition government. Labour was not... There was a lot of friction in Labour about Brexit, but if you're running to be prime minister, you need to take a firm position. And I think not taking a position on Brexit or being kind of wish-washy hurt him significantly, because Boris Johnson, whether he sticks with it, whether his version of Brexit is a Donald Trump version of populism, meaning not good for workers, he was pro-Brexit. He was clear. And I think that's why he's going to remain prime minister. And I think there's going to be a lot of buyer's remorse. Denise, Columbia, I like my reporters with more facts and less polish. Well, that's what you got here, baby. Definitely not a lot of polish, but I hope you like my facts. So, the Brits are so screwed and I'm not going to feel sorry for you guys because you chose this. Dimmick agreed with you, JC. Poor Gordon. He's probably very upset here. So, we'll have to monitor it, but be prepared. You are going to get hot takes tonight, tomorrow, that this spells disastrous for Bernie. Disastrous for Bernie. Has absolutely nothing to do with Bernie. And frankly, what is Great Britain have 60 million people? Bernie's campaign has been bringing out a lot of new voters. We'll have to look at the exit polls. I don't think Labor brought out record numbers of new voters. So we'll see what happens, but I do not see anything, transferable from what just happened there to here. I do think it actually is a bad sign for people like Elizabeth Warren. Listen, whether people like your position or not, people gravitate to people that stick with their positions. So Jeremy Corbyn not having a position on Brexit and sticking with it unequivocally hurt him. Well, look at Elizabeth Warren. Even though the media is trying to spin it, her polls are going down because she was for Medicare for All. She was in first place when she was unequivocally for Medicare for All. Her polls started going down when she started moonwalking. It's not rocket science, folks. Make up your mind. Stop trying to placate consultants. Stop trying to placate the Democratic Party or the Labor Party. Stop trying to placate the special interests. Stop trying to placate and triangulate and just have a fucking spine. Woo! Demonetized. So, I got one more story for you here, which to me is just a pattern, and it's not getting any attention. If you live in Pennsylvania, you might want to pay attention. 1 in 3 tests show Pennsylvania water contamination. States say it's not widespread. Just 1 in 3 in Pennsylvania, contaminated water, no big deal. The office of Democratic Governor Tom Wolf says test results do not indicate widespread PFAS contamination. PFAS is the chemical byproduct in the manufacturing of things like Teflon in drinking water supplies, though the toxic chemicals are present in about a third of water samples tested. The results were released last week, highlight growing debate over how much PFAS, if any, should be allowed in drinking water. None should be allowed in drinking water. The EPA has set a 70 parts per trillion health advisory level. However, in June, the Center for Disease Control said PFAS levels much lower than 70 parts per trillion may pose health risk. The toxic chemicals were widely used in industrial and consumer products and are often found around military airstrips where firefighting foams are used. PFAS have been connected to liver damage, high cholesterol, cancer, and other health problems. Also has been connected to reproductive problems in women. The state's reports show only 1 of 95 water samples exceeded the acceptable levels for PFAS, pointing to the EPA advisory level. However, the state is considering whether to implement its own stricter standard like other states have done. The PFAS report was made public a few weeks after the release of the feature film Dark Waters, which is bringing more national attention to the family of chemicals, also called forever chemicals, because they persist for decades in oil and water. This is the Mark Ruffalo movie that is out now. I definitely want to see it. Mark, if you're watching, feel free to invest in Status Coup. Just saying. In Pennsylvania, scientists have targeted 12 areas where industrial firefighting foam or manufacturing operations may have leached the chemicals, said DEP spokesperson Beth Rementer. Quote, communities are understandably very concerned. It's become a national conversation, and so that's why we're taking very deliberate, meticulous steps. One water supply in Center County, the electronics manufacturer State of the Art Inc., tested above the federal health advisory with a level of 114 parts per trillion. The public doesn't access that drinking water, and employees there have been given bottled water. So, first of all, what's amazing to me about this is, A, that it's not getting much media attention. Who sets these advisory levels? Who decides that, oh, it's 70 parts per trillion of this cancer-causing chemical? Anything above that, no good. Anything around that, you'll be fine. Who is deciding this? Is it the chemical company? Is it the EPA? Is it the CDC? Because I got news for you. The 15 parts per billion of lead that has been arbitrarily put in there. Thank you for the swear jar super chat. Cole Conley, $5. The 15 parts per billion of lead is not a health measurement. The CDC says 0 parts per billion of lead for children. And most experts would say even low amounts of lead in adults can destroy your body. Trust me, I see it. I've been there 15 times to Flint. I see the steady decline of the residents year after year. I've been going since 2016. Some residents that when I met, had some effects of the water, but now they could barely walk. So I don't know who is setting these measurements, but they're not verifiable scientific health measurements. Oh, by the way, as any doctor would tell you, everybody's different. So 70 parts per trillion might, some, marathon runners, maybe they could still live fine with that. Others with pre-existing conditions, whose bodies are still forming, if you're a young person, maybe 20 parts per trillion could really destroy your body. So to me, this is cockamamie science being used by the EPA, because the EPA, even before Trump, everybody thinks the EPA went to shit under Trump. It was shit before that. But the EPA, a lot of these measurements are very business-friendly measurements, because we don't want to make Dow Chemical or DuPont have to actually, safely administer their products. We want to allow them to pollute the air, the water, and communities, because, they need to make money. And then they need to donate to our politicians. This is the system we live in. Cockamamie is a Yiddish word, yes. So, I got news for you. And as status quo grows, I would like to do a documentary on this. There is a water crisis in this country. And the chickens are coming home to roost, folks. And they ain't organic chickens. This is happening everywhere. It's like climate change. And of course, the media will only care once their lavish apartments are put underwater. They will only care once their kids' water has high levels of PFAS or lead or arsenic or TTHMs or bacteria. But they're gonna soon. Genocide capitalist style. Yep. And all I could say is stay tuned. Jen and I have a major story. And today I got an on-the-record statement for the ages. That's all I could say. But this on-the-record statement is major. Major. And that's a good point, JB. The water crisis isn't just here, it's worldwide. That's all I got for today. I will be back tomorrow, live as always, and we will also be live on Sunday. Status Coup can only grow as far as you take us, so if you're not a member yet, sign up. Today is a good example of what we're doing. We're the only ones, or very, very few, doing real in-the-field investigative reporting. We are one of the few actually going out to cover these rallies. I will be in the field probably in the next 7 days. Just needed to get a cameraman, but we're trying somebody out, so hopefully that works out. So definitely, if you got the funds, definitely give it as a gift to yourself for the holidays. Statuscoup.com/join. We are doing this the old-fashioned way. We don't have any fat cat sponsors. We have no sugar daddies investing in us. You are our fat cats. Statuscoup.com/join. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Great reporting by Marcus. Definitely go to our website. Check out this great story Jen did, titled Pete on Park Avenue. Jen did a deep dive into one of Pete's fundraisers this week. And shocker, his idea of the next generation is to have caviar and champagne with a Rothschild heir. So if that's your idea of the new generation of leadership, definitely read this story. It's for you. Peter on Park Avenue. We're trying to do more written stories as well. Great story by Jen Dyes. Thank you for watching. I will see you tomorrow. Remember, most people are not lacking compassion in this country. Most people have no idea what is going on all around them. Peace out.